When you see like a giant paper mache head or some kind of caricature sign at a protest or a parade, the expectation is usually pretty straightforward.
Right. I mean, it's a quick visual punchline. You're supposed to look at it and go, look at this guy. Isn't he ridiculous?
Exactly. It's surface level mockery. But
Mhm.
today, we're doing a deep dive into the thoughts of someone who looked at that exact kind of two-dimensional parade art and suddenly saw a really profound answer to thousands of years of historical trauma.
Yeah, it's a huge leap. We're looking at an essay by Lev Neymotin called Dancing Hora with Evil Puppets. And he wasn't just, reviewing street activism here.
No, not at all. He's unpacking this deeply emotional, really intensely reflective philosophical journey about hatred, memory, and like the weird paradoxical power of making evil ridiculous.
And before we really get into it, because this essay touches on very raw historical and modern conflicts, we need to make our mission for this deep dive super clear right up front.
Yeah.
We are just here to impartially trace Neymotin's exact narrative. We aren't taking sides. We aren't endorsing any specific political viewpoints. We're just walking alongside his personal realization about how the human mind processes absolute darkness without, being consumed by it.
Right, we're just exploring the ideas in the text. And it all starts with this very specific, almost bizarre image from a recent Israel Day parade in New York City.
Oh, yeah, the cardboard cutout.
Yeah, so the organizers of the parade did something pretty unusual. The mayor of New York City, Mayor Mamdani, had excused himself from attending in person. So they decided to just print out a two-dimensional cardboard cutout of the mayor and carry it through the streets instead.
It's literally a flat stand-in, like a cardboard presence designed to fill the exact space left by his deliberate absence.
And Moten is watching this, right? And he overhears a conversation with another attendee at the parade who's genuinely upset about it.
Yeah, they're really displeased. They're complaining that they have to look at this M-puppet, as they call it, marching alongside supporters of Israel when the actual guy refused to be there.
Which, I mean, you can kind of understand that initial frustration, right? You feel like the prop is just giving airtime to someone who slighted you.
Sure, yeah.
But Mimoten has this completely contrarian reaction. He looks at the cutout and realizes it's actually brilliant. It's kind of like a psychological judo move.
A judo move? I like that. How so?
Well, you take a person's explicit refusal to participate, and you use that exact absence to force them into the parade. Like, they can't give a speech, they can't resist, they are entirely stripped of agency and just carried along by the crowd.
Right, that stripping of agency is the whole key here. Neymotin really zeroes in on the absolute powerlessness of the puppet.
Yeah.
Symbolically, the guy who wanted to keep his distance is now completely unable to stop himself from joining the march.
Yeah, he's just bobbing along. But I'm wondering how far Neymotin takes this logic. Because if it works for a local mayor who just decided to stay home, what's the next step?
Well, he immediately makes this major emotional leap. He asks, what if the puppet didn't just march down the avenue? What if it danced with the people?
Oh, wow. Dance.
Yeah. And specifically, what if it danced the Hora?
The traditional Jewish circle dance.
Exactly. And this is where the essay really pivots from just a clever observation into something ancient. By introducing the Hora, the puppet isn't just a protest prop anymore.
It becomes something else entirely.
Right. Neymotin describes this as like an old Jewish solution to danger and arrogance. You take what was meant to frighten you, you pull it right into the center of the circle, and you make it dance.
That is such a striking visual, because you aren't destroying the thing that frightens you, and you certainly aren't running away from it. You're actually absorbing it into your own joy.
Exactly. You neutralize it with joy.
But, I mean, since dictatorial power relies entirely on maintaining this terrifying physical presence, what happens when you strip that away and apply this to, history's darkest figures?
Well, his imagination scales the concept way up. He starts inviting the actual architects of historical trauma into this dance. And the guest list he builds is, it's incredibly heavy.
Who does he bring in?
He envisions bringing in Haman from the biblical story of Purim, with all his royal self-importance just flattened into paper.
Wow.
He pictures Pharaoh, still perpetually confused that the enslaved people simply walked out of Egypt, reduced to a cardboard prop.
Oh, and he brings in Antiochus, too, right? The Greek king from the Hanukkah story. Like, trying to understand why oil and memory keep outlasting his empires.
Yes, exactly. And then he moves forward in time, pulling in figures like Torquemada. And just think about Torquemada for a second.
The Spanish Inquisition.
Right. A man whose entire historical legacy is built on the rigid, terrifying absolutes of the Inquisition. Imagine that severe, humorless energy stripped of its torture chambers, and he's just a piece of paper bobbing awkwardly up and down to folk music.
That's that's wild. And he doesn't stop there, does he? He goes into Eastern European history too.
He does. He includes figures associated with devastating pogroms, like
Mhm.
Bogdan Khmelnytsky and Simon Petlura, and then he goes right to the absolute extremes of modern history.
Yeah, this is where it gets really intense. He writes about bringing in Hitler, reduced to a grotesque puppet without command. The Mufti, Gamal Abdel Nasser, Yasser Arafat.
Right.
He imagines all these figures who so proudly carried hatred just placed into the circle with happy painted faces.
And to really understand why this image is so potent, you have to look at the physical mechanics of the Hora itself, which Nemotin points out brilliantly.
The geometry of the dance.
Yes. Dictators and architects of terror, they rely on very specific linear geometry, marching troops, perfectly aligned rallies, elevated podiums, so they can literally look down on everyone else.
Right, it's all about rigid hierarchy, complete control.
Exactly. But the Hora just destroys that geometry. It's circular, and it is entirely leaderless. Nobody controls its shape for very
And
long.
it's a circle forces equality.
Exactly. So when you put a dictator or, a cardboard cutout of one into a circle dance, they stumble.
Yeah.
They don't look like a supreme commander. The circle turns their pride into absolute awkwardness.
It's like the cruelty is suddenly forced to become comedy. It acts as this accidental confession that they completely failed to end history.
Yeah, that's exactly the vibe.
But wait, I have to jump in here and challenge this premise for a second. On behalf of anyone listening who might be feeling a bit uncomfortable,
Sure, go ahead.
if you take someone like Hitler or these architects of horrific pogroms and you turn them into a smiling paper doll bopping around a circle, doesn't that risk sanitizing the devastating reality of what they actually did?
That's a very fair point.
Like, if I'm listening to this, I might feel like turning history's worst monsters into a cartoon is sort of minimizing the very real trauma of the victims.
It's a vital question, and honestly, Nemotin is acutely aware of that exact danger. He is very careful to explicitly ground this whole thought experiment in reality.
So he addresses that directly.
He does. He states really clearly as a caveat, hatred is not defeated by a dance, and history is not repaired by cardboard. He knows intimately that a joke alone doesn't provide comfort to people who are currently suffering.
Okay, so he isn't suggesting this as like a blanket cure-all to just brush away the pain with some clever irony.
Not at all. In fact, he respectfully and entirely defers to the survivors. He specifically mentions Holocaust survivors, October 7 survivors, and grieving families who carry the living wounds of violence.
Right, the people who actually bore the brunt of it.
Exactly. Nemotin states that they, and they alone, have earned the absolute right to decide who belongs in that symbolic circle today. They are the only ones who get to dictate which names or organizations get turned into puppets for the dance.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a psychological tool for looking at the long arc of history and refusing to let the villains dictate the terms of memory. But it absolutely requires the permission of the survivors.
Precisely. And because this image of the dancing villain is so effective at stripping away their power, Nemotin's mind naturally pushes him to test the inverse scenario.
Right, because every strong image kind of begs to be flipped.
Exactly.
Okay, so if the Jewish people can make cardboard puppets of history's worst villains and force them to dance at a joyful parade, what happens if you reverse the roles?
Right. What if puppets of Jewish heroes were printed out and carried into anti-Israel rallies?
Wow. Does he build a list for that too?
He does. He builds a very specific list of great leaders from the Jewish past and present. Moses, King David, Queen Esther, Mordecai, Judah Maccabee, Rabbi Akiva, Maimonides.
And he brings it into the modern era too, right? Like Theodore Herzl, Chaim Weitzman, David Ben-Gurion, Golda Meir, Menachem Begin, Natan Sharansky.
Yeah, he imagines these massive historical figures being flattened into puppets and marched around by those who hate Israel, symbolically placed on the side of evil.
But wait, the moment he sets up this mental experiment, he instantly shoots it down, doesn't he?
He does. He calls it an absolute impossibility.
Why? I mean, what is he saying is fundamentally missing from the mechanics of ideological evil that prevents them from doing this?
Well, he points out that it's not a technical limitation. I mean, anyone with a printer and some cardboard can make a puppet.
Right, they physically could carry anything.
But he claims they never would, because what is entirely absent on the side of ideological evil is a sense of humor.
A sense of humor, really. I mean, I need to unpack that because at first glance, a lack of humor feels like, I don't know, a minor personality flaw, not a defining trait of historical evil.
It sounds minor, yeah, until you look at the architecture of what a sense of humor actually requires.
Mhm.
Newmoten takes this concept very seriously.
Okay.
He notes that he deeply associates general intelligence with a sense of humor, because true humor requires distance from oneself.
Distance from oneself? You mean like the ability to step outside your own ego?
Yes, to have a sense of humor, you need to be able to see the absurdity of your own posture in the world. You need to allow a crack in your armor of absolute certainty.
Oh, that's interesting.
And most importantly, Newmoten says, it requires inner freedom. You must have enough inner freedom to survive the experience of being laughed at.
Huh. If you're listening to this and trying to picture what that lack of inner freedom looks like in everyday life, just think of the most argumentative, deeply radicalized person you've ever encountered on the internet.
Oh, absolutely.
Someone entirely consumed by a rigid ideology. They literally cannot take a joke about their worldview.
Yeah.
Any slight, any irony, it feels like a mortal threat to their entire identity.
That's the exact mechanism Neymoten is describing, just on a macro historical scale. Ideological evil is fundamentally heavy. It is completely suffocated by its own certainty and self-righteousness.
It's constantly working overtime to arrange the world into binary categories, right?
Yes, absolute purity versus absolute guilt. The ultimate victim versus the ultimate enemy. There's no gray area.
So it's just too stiff to engage in absurdity. Because making a cardboard puppet of Moses and forcing it to dance in your protest requires you to playfully acknowledge the humanity of the figure.
Exactly, and absolute hatred just can't afford to be playful. Neymoten writes beautifully here that ideological evil cannot dance unless it is the one commanding the dance.
Right, it has to be in charge.
Yeah, and it cannot laugh unless that laughter is used to humiliate someone else.
Hmm.
It completely lacks the capacity for the self-deprecating absurd joy that a dance like the Hora represents.
So the side of survival uses absurdity to diminish fear, while the side of ideological hatred is literally too stiff, too fragile in its own certainty to even understand the joke.
Which brings us to why Neymoten believes joy isn't just a nice feeling to have. It is a mandatory act of defiance.
A mandatory act of defiance. And this realization forces him to reflect on the very nature of hatred itself, doesn't it?
It does. Looking around at the current rise in hatred globally,
Mhm.
and he specifies any hatred from anyone toward anyone, he expresses a deep emotional distress.
Because he views hatred as spiritually primitive,
Spiritually primitive, exactly. He calls it an old machinery.
like an outdated piece of technology that we should have moved past.
Yeah, it's an ancient lazy reflex that belongs to a much earlier stage of human development. He analyzes how this old machinery operates. It relies heavily on crowds gathering quickly around contempt. It relies on slogans.
Oh, he writes that a slogan still saves people from thinking. That line is just incredible.
It really is.
Because a slogan allows a person to dress up their base hatred as virtue, completely bypassing any need for complex thought or moral nuance.
And because this primitive machinery of hatred is still actively operating in the world today, Neymoten concludes that maybe a cardboard puppet isn't such a trivial thing after all.
It serves a purpose.
Right. Ridicule in this context serves a vital protective function. Now, he draws a very careful line here. Ridicule is never a substitute for moral clarity. You still absolutely need to know the difference between right and wrong.
Right. Laughing at a dictator doesn't magically stop their army.
Exactly.
But if you lose your joy while fighting them, the hatred has effectively won anyway, hasn't it? It has infected you and hardened you into the same rigid shape as the people you're fighting against.
That is the exact danger he's warning against. Ridicule protects your moral clarity from becoming stiff, joyless, and ultimately brittle.
It keeps you human.
Yes. Forcing the symbolic hater into the Jewish circle via a cardboard cutout isn't about forgiving them. It's not about extending an olive branch or trying to debate them logically.
It's a declaration. It's saying to the oppressor, you wanted to stand outside of our humanity and condemn us, but here you are, trapped inside our circle, completely powerless, looking utterly ridiculous and forced to move to our rhythm.
That's exactly it.
You wanted history to end with your hatred, but history is still turning, and you are nothing but a flat prop in someone else's enduring dance.
There's this essential duality in his image lightness and seriousness. The lightness is crucial because without it, the survivors just become endlessly reactive.
Letting the haters dictate their emotional weather.
Right. But the seriousness is what grounds it, because this laughter isn't empty or naive. It is forged from deep memory.
The laughter only works because it comes from knowing exactly what hatred is capable of if people aren't vigilant. The cardboard puppet is only harmless because the real living people dancing around it remain watchful and alive.
Which really leads to Odin's final, surprisingly specific call to action.
Oh, right, he gives them a deadline.
Yeah, because this joy isn't just an abstract thought experiment for him, it's a psychological tool for survival. So he actually demands that this becomes a physical reality. He addresses the organizers of the Israel Day Parade and similar events worldwide, telling them to get busy preparing for June 2027.
He literally tells them to manufacture these flat, helpless puppets with their fixed, painted smiles.
Yes, he wants Haman, Pharaoh, Torquemada, Hitler, Arafat, whomever the actual survivors recognize as belonging in that company, brought right into the center of the circle. He wants them to dance the Hora.
And he ends this emotionally charged essay with a deeply moving justification. He says, let these puppets dance, not because the haters deserve any joy, but because we do, because the living do.
Because the living do, it's powerful.
So if we step back and look at the terrain we've covered in this deep dive, we started with a deceptively simple image, a cardboard protest prop of a local mayor avoiding a parade.
Right.
And by following Lev Nemotin's intensely reflective chain of thought, we watched the two-dimensional prop evolve into a profound lens for viewing the survival of a people.
We unpack the mechanics of the Hora, exploring how the geometry of a leaderless circle dance can physically and symbolically turn historical terror into awkward absurdity.
Yeah, and we dissected the anatomy of ideological evil, uncovering how its rigid certainty and lack of inner freedom make it spiritually primitive, a machine reliant on thought-terminating slogans and contempt.
And most importantly, we explore this beautiful, defiant argument that joy and ridicule are not distractions from the fight against darkness. They are essential tools used to protect our moral clarity.
They ensure that the act of survival doesn't require surrendering your human face, your ability to laugh at the absurd, or your fundamental right to dance.
It really serves as a powerful reminder that sometimes the most devastating resistance against ideological hatred isn't just fighting it on its own miserable terms, but entirely refusing to let it extinguish your capacity for lightness.
As we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you, listening right now, with a final, lingering thought to explore on your own. A way to take Nemotin's historical realization and apply it directly to the mechanics of your own life.
Yeah, think about the forces, the anxieties, or the rigid people that currently hold the most power or intimidation over you.
Oh, I like where this is going.
If you were to mentally flatten them into a two-dimensional cardboard puppet, strip them of their agency, and force them to dance awkwardly to your rhythm, how much of their terrifying power over you would simply evaporate?
It really changes your perspective. The next time you see a 2D cutout or face down an intimidating force, maybe you won't just see a threat or a simple joke. Maybe you'll see a blueprint for a tiny victory over the things that try to keep us rigid. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.